HESS Midstream is scheduled to report first quarter earnings on Wednesday, April 30th, before the market open. For HESS Midstream, they reported revenue in the previous quarter of $395.9 million, beating by $5.03 million. They reported EPS normalized at 68 cents per share, which was in line with estimates. For this quarter, they're expected to report $381.62 million with earnings per share of 69 cents. Over the last 90 days, no analysts have raised estimates and 5 analysts have lowered estimates. HESS Midstream beats analysts' one-year forward estimates 14% of the time. The options market is pricing an earnings implied move of plus or minus 6.18%. When looking at the HESM price chart, we can see that it's followed a very similar pattern to that of other equities that we've reviewed in these videos, where prior to the tariff announcements, equities started to adjust based on expected tariffs, and then the tariffs were announced on April the 2nd following the close, and on the 3rd we saw a pretty big sell-off in HESM and other equities where we finally reached a bottom, and HESM has been steadily improving since that time. It has been following the 5-day moving average. It's trading currently above the 20-day moving average, and it is above the 200-day moving average. And it has retraced 50% of the price drop from this 44.05 down to this low of 33.59. It has retraced half of that. When we look at the relative strength index, we can see that it is improving, and it's currently sitting at 50.13. When we look at the PPO, we can see that it is trading in negative territory, but we did have a signal line crossover to the upside with increasing momentum at the moment. When we compare it to the SPX, its relative strength is slightly underperforming the SPX at the moment. The momentum is exceeding that of the SPX. When we look at the accumulation, we can see there's been steady accumulation over the last year. We can see that there's currently negative money flow, but it has spent a lot of time with positive money flow over the last year. When we look at the comparison to the SP, or this is to the comparison to the SPY, we can see that it's outperformed the SPY 8.66% over the last year. It's outperformed the energy sector by 34.10%, and it is underperforming its own industry group by 13.17%. On April the 11th, HESS Midstream offered 11 million shares at $39.45 per share. That was below the previous day close of $40.85. But you can see that after that time, it quickly recovered in price and then reached an all-time high. On the 4th of April, during this big red bar here during the sell-off, I sold 22% of my holding at $38.49. But since the 7th, I've added back everything that I sold, that 22% plus an additional 10%, at an average cost of $36.47. So HESS Midstream is now sitting at about 3.3% of my portfolio. Overall, I think HESS Midstream is showing positive relative strength going into the earnings. The HESS Midstream 5-year weekly trend chart has shown that it has been in the long term view has been positive all the way since the end of 2020. So it has really been an excellent performer. When we look at the midterm trend, we can see that it has spent most of its time above the zero line. Very few times has it dipped below, and when it does, it's for 5 or 6 weeks at a time. The short-term trend is obviously more choppy. It has spent most of its time above the 0 point, but we did have a drop-off here with the tariff announcements and the market repricing, but we have since moved back into positive territory for the short-term view over the next few weeks, and for the midterm over the next few months. We do have improving price action here and look to be possibly crossing back over this midpoint very soon. HESS Midstream is trading at a slight premium when compared to the sector. HESM trades at 12.41 times forward PE compared to the sector at 10.79. When we look at the growth rates, the expected EPS growth rate of HESM is 21.04 compared to the sector down 1.09 over the next year. The expected revenue growth of HESM is 11.03 compared to the sector revenue growth at 3.51. And HESM is more profitable than the sector when compared to the sector. HESM has 14.92 net margin compared to the sector at 9.03. Fast Graphs shows the blended PE of HESS Midstream to be at 14.49 times, has an EPS yield of 6.9%, and a dividend yield of 7.21%. Over this time frame, basically from 2016 onwards, they've had an average adjusted earnings growth rate of 17.67 over that time frame. Fast Graphs calculates their fair value ratio to be 17.67 times, and their normal PE ratio is 15.75 times. HESS Midstream has had good growth over the years, and the analysts are expecting that growth to continue at 24% for 2025, 20% for 2026, and 14% for 2027. We can see that they're currently trading below their normal PE, the blue line, and their calculated fair value, which is this gold line. If we look at this price and compare it to the normal PE at the end of this year, we're looking at a total annualized return of 49.36. I want to thank you for watching and hope the earnings preview was helpful. Talk to you again soon. Have a great day. Thank you and trade well.